Narayanam namaskrityam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jaya udirayet nashtaprayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavate uttam shloke bhaktir bhavatir naishtike Om Agyantimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham karoti vachanam pangam langyate girim yatkripadamaham vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Paramanandam Madhavam. So, in this chapter, Lord Kapila is essentially talking about the non-devotee engagements. So he speaks about the Sakam Karmis, the Nishkam Karmis, the impersonalist. And now he will, so initially he kind of presented them. Now he will give his opinion. So beginning from the 16th verse, for the next 6 verse, Lord Kapila will essentially criticize Sakam Karma. He'll condemn it. Yetva yaha saktamansa karma sushadadayan vitaha kurvante pratisidhani nityanyapi chakritashnashaha. Persons who are too addicted to this material world execute their prescribed duties very nicely and with great faith. They daily perform all such prescribed activities with attachment to the fruitive results. So this verse is obviously talking about the Sakams. Now, bear in mind, this is not talking about the Vikarmis, because clearly Lord Kapila is saying that they execute their prescribed duties. So prescribed means that it's been prescribed as per the scriptures, and they do it very nicely and with great faith, in the scriptures. So these are essentially the karma kandis, and they perform sakam karma, which is, Lord Kapila says, 2 kinds of karma. So he says nityani and apratisidhani. They perform 2 kinds of duties. So nityani is essentially nitya karma. This is daily duties. One can consider them to be sustenance duties. Cooking to eat, sleeping, waking up, taking a bath. So these are nityani. These are daily duties. Then apratisidhani is kamya karma. So kamya karma is essentially optional activities that are performed with the goal of attaining certain material desires. Right? So kamya karma is like putra kameshi. So putra kameshi is somebody performs that procedure in order to get a child. Similarly, in the scriptures, there are different processes that are given in order to get good health or progeny or marriage, spouse, etc. So these are all kamya karma. So even though Lord Kapila is saying that they're performing the activities that are prescribed in the scriptures, he's still criticizing them. So then why are they there in the scriptures? If the Lord himself is criticizing them and the scriptures come from the Lord, then why are they there in the scriptures? And this is because not every injunction in the scripture is meant for everyone. Or if you put it the other way around, parts of the scriptures are meant for certain class of people. So we see the Bhagavatam is of course large. Bhagavad Gita is only 700 verses. And we see Krishna doing the same thing in Bhagavad Gita also. In the 3rd chapter, he says, Arjun, you do your prescribed duties. 3:11, he says, right, that parasparam bhavayanta, that you cooperate with the devas. And by this cooperation, you will attain prosperity. Later on, in the 7th chapter, he says, Kama is teste hrityajnana. He says, such people who are worshipping the demigods, their intelligence is stolen by material desires. So, same people that he was glorifying in the 3rd chapter, he's condemning in the 7th chapter. Similarly, in the 2nd chapters, he says, Karmanya vadikaraste, that you have a right to perform your duty. Eva adhikaraste. And then in 1866, he says, Sarvadharma pratyaje, abandon all varieties of duties. Right? Direct contrast to it. And the reason again is that because the Bhagavad Gita is a summation of the Vedas, just like not all the verses in the Vedas are for everyone, not all the verses in the Bhagavad Gita are for everyone. And Krishna explains that in the 2nd chapter itself, in verse 46, where he says that 246, Yavanartha Udupane, that the purpose of a well can be served by a reservoir. And Vishwanath Chakravarti, when he comments on the verse, he says that verse means that in a reservoir, there are several wells. So the purpose of 100 wells is served by one reservoir. And a person takes whatever the suitable water is for them. Similarly, like through an analogy, we can understand that you get a book of medicines, and in that there are so many medicines that are given. Like for this take this, for this take that. Now that does not mean that just because it is given in the book of medicine, the person takes all the medicines. What will the person do? He will see that these are my symptoms. This is a particular medicine that is prescribed to address those symptoms. So I will take that medicine. Some medicines may be just so that the person can barely function. Some medicines may be that a person may be out of pain. Some medicine may be that the person becomes extremely healthy and robust. Right? Now one can say that why doesn't the book of medicine just give that medicine? Because not everybody can take it. So according to one's adhikar, one takes the relevant verses in the scriptures. Just like according to one's symptoms, a person takes the relevant medicines, and that's where the guru helps. That determining your adhikar and determining what is applicable for you. Otherwise, it becomes what is known as adhikukati nyaya. It's the half hen logic. That if some person whimsically takes this and that, they will end up nowhere. Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he says that the following 6 verses the Srimad Bhagavatam criticizes persons who are too materially attached. It is enjoined in the Vedic scriptures that those who are attached to the enjoyment of material facilities have to sacrifice and undergo certain ritualistic performance. They have to observe certain rules and regulations in their daily lives to be elevated to the heavenly planets. It is stated in this verse that such persons cannot be liberated at any time. So now why is Prabhupada saying that? That such a person cannot be liberated any time? Because on surface, it contradicts the four essential verses of the Bhagavatam. Right? The fourth verse says that Bhakti is Sarvada Sarvatra. That anyone and everyone can take it at any time. So when Prabhupada is saying that such person cannot be liberated anytime, it's in the same mode like Krishna says. Like in the sixth chapter, Krishna says that those who are envious, I perpetually cast them in the ocean of material existence. Now, if Krishna is saying that, what hope is there for the jiva? Like Krishna is saying, I perpetually, for eternity, forever, I cast them into this ocean. So the Acharyas say that the understanding is that perpetuity is determined based on the condition that the person is. So when Prabhupada says they cannot be liberated at any time, then what he says is that as long as they have this fruitive mentality, they cannot be liberated anytime. So when Krishna says that I perpetually cast them in this demoniac species of life, it means that as long as they are envious, they will always get a demoniac life. So Krishna says Avajanati Mam Mudha, that if one does not accept my divine nature, then Rakshasim Asurim Daiva. Right? 9:11, 9:12, the two verses, he makes this point. So the point he's making is that for those who are Avajanati Mam Mudha, those who refuse to accept my divine nature, then Rakshasisim Asurim Chaiva. Then I give them this form. And even Krishna giving them that form is not really Krishna punishing them, because they are actually happy with that form. That when they have this mood of defying the presence of the personality of Godhead, if Krishna gives them birth in a devotee family, they will be very unhappy there, because everybody else is doing Hare Krishna over there. And this particular person has this mentality that I do not accept Krishna. So he will be very, very miserable in that family or in that village. But if he's born in a Asuric family, and then he says, I don't accept Krishna, and then everybody will clap and say, you are now our leader. And people will say that, in this family, a boy has been born, he says that he does not accept God. And they will all come to see him and glorify him. So for him, it is actually a good thing. Krishna's mercy is manifesting on him. Just like it is manifesting on us. Like we say that Krishna has cast us from the spiritual world into the material world as a punishment to our rebellious nature. But Krishna has actually been merciful upon us, because the nature of the Bahirmukhi Jiva is such that he's very, very miserable in the spiritual world. All that misery that is there in the material world is like a drop in front of the misery that he experiences in the spiritual world. For the devotees, it's the opposite. All the enjoyment in the material world is like a drop compared to the to the single moment of enjoyment in the spiritual world. But for the Bahirmukhi Jiva, it is the opposite. Because such a person can't stand Krishna. And everywhere he turns around, he is reminded of Krishna. People are serving Krishna, people are glorifying Krishna, people are running around trying to serve the devotees of Krishna. And he's like this is hell. And Krishna says, okay, let me help you there. So in this section where Lord Kapila is condemning these people with a materialistic notion, then one can understand that this condemnation is from a philosophical perspective. That Krishna does not have anything personal against them. Right? Rakhe Krishna mare ke, mare Krishna rakhe ke. If Krishna was really upset at such people, then they would be gone tomorrow. Not even tomorrow, today they'll be gone. But he's condemning them from a philosophical perspective, not because he has anything, he has a personal grudge against them. Verse 17. Rajasa kuntha manasa kamatmano jitendriya pitranyajante anudinam grahes abhiratashayah. Such persons, impelled by the more of passion, are full of anxieties and always aspire for sense gratification due to uncontrolled senses. They worship the forefathers and are busy day and night improving the economic condition of their family, social or national life. So what is the conduct of the person with this mentality? That the mind is fatigued by passion, desire, and uncontrolled senses. It's a poor mind, right? The mind is trying to rest, and then suddenly the senses come knocking. But you see that object of the senses, what do you think about it? And the mind somehow pacifies the sense, and then because of the prarabdha, the desire suddenly comes up. That we need to do this, or I need this. So all this passion, this fire that is burning is fatiguing their mind. And Lord Kapila says, what do they do with this fatigued mind? Household affairs. Somehow they're carrying this fatigued mind to do the household affairs. Then they daily worship the Pitras. So they worship the Pitras for prosperity and elevation to their respective planets. Now, it's important to note here that even though they are worshipping according to the scriptures, this worship is actually called Swabhavaja Shraddha, which is worshipping according to one's propensity. So in the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, verse 2, Arjuna asks this question, that those who do not have faith, how do they worship? And Krishna says, Swabhavaja Shraddha, that based on their own swabhav, they develop faith. So how can we say that this is Swabhavaja Shraddha when they're actually worshipping according to bona fide scriptures? So the reason that this is considered Swabhavaja, it is because they are not following the scriptures in the correct spirit of things. So it is again what is known as the half chicken nyaya, that they're taking parts of the scriptures and using them to satisfy their own desires. So that is why it is called, Krishna calls this in chapter 9, verse 23, he calls this as avidhi purvakam, that this is not according to the scriptures. So it's like a doctor comes with a book of medicines, and then you open that book of medicine on any random page, and then start taking the medicine according to whatever that page comes up in, and then say, well, I'm following the book of medicine, right? But in theory, it is correct, but practically it is avidhi purvakam, because that's not how you follow the book of medicine. You need to consult with the doctor. The doctor needs to look at your disease and symptoms, then look at the book of medicine and prescribe the medicines suitable for you. That would be vidhi purvakam. So that is why such practitioners are actually condemned. Verse 18. Traivargikaste purusha vimukkhahari medhashaha kathayam kathanyoro vikramasya madhudvishaha. Such persons are called Traivargika because they are interested in the three elevating processes. They are averse to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can give relief to the conditioned soul. They are not interested in the Supreme Personality's pastimes, which are worth hearing because of his transcendental prowess. So Traivargikas is Varga is the three paths, which is basically Artha, Dharma, and Kam. So they're essentially pursuing Dharma for Artha and Kam, for material gains and sense enjoyment. Not interested in moksha. Then they are Vimukha. They are averse to the Lord. And it's unfortunate that they are averse to the Lord, because Lord Kapila says that this is the Lord who is capable of destroying samsara, destroying the cycle of birth and death. This is the Lord who is the killer of Madhu. So Madhu is a demon. Madhu also represents demoniac qualities. And this is the Lord who is the most heroic and worthy of praise. So one may ask, why is it that they are averse to someone who is so great that he can destroy the samsara, he can destroy the demoniac qualities, he's heroic, worthy of praise? And the reason is that they're averse because they're attached to their material existence. So they will not take to any process that will threaten the material existence. So what do they do when somebody comes and says that surrender to Krishna? And they will say, well, these are mythological stories. Who knows whether there was Krishna or not? You expect me to surrender to mythology? And they will say, well, there are so many aspects. Some say this, some say that. So I say something else. So they will speculate. But essentially what they will do is that either they will either bring down the spiritual to the material level, or they will elevate themselves to the position of Krishna. So either they will say that Krishna was an ordinary person, or they will say that we are God. Prabhupada says that the personality of Godhead is here described as Hari Medha, or he who can deliver one from the cycle of birth and death. Materialistic persons are never interested in hearing about the marvelous pastimes of the Lord. They think that they are fictions and stories, and that the Supreme Godhead is also a man of material nature. They are not fit for advancing in devotional service or Krishna consciousness. Such persons are actually, in the prayers by Dhruva Maharaj, when he begins to pray to Lord Vishnu, then he condemns the materialistic persons, arhatis. He says that that people who worship you simply for sense gratification of this bag of skin are certainly influenced by your illusory energy. In spite of having you, who are like a desired tree and the cause of liberation from birth and death, foolish persons such as me desire benedictions from you for sense gratification. So this is Dhruva Maharaj also feeling bad about the way that he himself approached Krishna. Because initially he approached Krishna to get a kingdom greater than Brahma, material kingdom. So he begins off by actually condemning himself there. Sometimes people quote this verse to say that of all the kind of conditioning, people who are arhatis, so the four kinds that Krishna talks about in the 7th chapter, Artho, Artharthi, Jigyasu, and Jnani, sometimes it is said that the Arthos are the worst because they're looking for wealth. Actually, it's not true. It's that Dhruva Maharaj is basically taking a position of humility. He's saying there's nobody who can be worse than me. And I happen to be an Artharthi. All of them are equal. They're, with the exception of Jnani, of course, which Krishna keeps at a high platform. The others are all Mishra Bhaktis, Mishra Bhaktas. Okay, let's go to the next verse. Nunam deve navihata ye chachut katha shudham hitva shanvatya sadgatha purisham eva vidbhujaha. Such persons are condemned by the supreme order of the Lord because they are averse to the nectar of the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are compared to stool-eating hogs. They give up hearing the transcendental activities of the Lord and indulge in hearing of the abominable activities of materialistic persons. So, struck by fate and rejecting the nectar of the topics of the Lord, such people, they only hear about material topics. Like analogy is given like the pigs eating rubbish. So what does it mean that such persons are condemned by the Supreme Lord, or Vishwanath Chakravarti translates this as struck by fate? So it means that the rejecting of the topics of the Lord is attributed to fate. Vishwanath Chakravarti makes this interesting point that it is their destiny to reject Krishna Katha. That's why he says struck by fate. Prabhupada also says similar, persons are condemned by the supreme order of the Lord, which is destiny. Now, as I mentioned that in the 7th chapter, Krishna talks about 4 kinds of pious people who surrender to him with material desires. Right? He calls them Sukirtano. They're not able to surrender completely because they have not received the mercy of the devotee. So when Krishna in 9:11 Bhagavad Gita, he addresses the materialist as Avajanati Mamura. In Krishna, he is actually showing compassion to their rejection of his divine nature. Because what does he say? That param bhava ajanato, that these pure these poor people. So when he says avijanati mammura, foolish people, these poor people, they are rejecting me because they do not know my nature. Because papa bhavam ajanito, that because they're unaware of my transcendental nature, right? Now, so this is verse 9:11. In 9:13, Krishna, he glorifies. He says, Mahatmanastu mam partha. Right? He glorifies these Mahatmas. Why? Because gyatva bhutadin avyaya. Because they know of his nature. Now, why are they called great? Because by good fortune, they have come in contact with devotees. So that is why Mudha is not translated as fool, but as unfortunate. That it is the bad fortune that they have not come in contact with devotees, and the Mahatmanas, it is their good fortune that they have come in contact with devotees. So just as the followers of Bhakti cannot take credit themselves, but they give credit to those who help them. So similarly, one has, so it's like if I ask Sarang Prabhu that how did you become a devotee? Then eventually there will be one person that he will give credit to. I came in contact with this person, or maybe my parents gave it to me. But to one person they will give credit. This is the one person who made me a devotee. That's the only difference between the Mahatmanastu Mam Partha and the Avajanati Mam Mudha. That the Mudhas were unfortunate that they did not come in contact with that one person. Now, one might argue this point and say that it is possible. Prem Kishore Prabhu, is everything okay at your end? Okay, your video is going on and off. Now it's gone off. Okay. So, so one might argue, saying that it's possible that even the Mudha came in contact with the devotee, but did not take bhakti. And the Mahatmanas came in contact with the devotee and took bhakti. Now, Vishnu Chakravarti makes this interesting point in Madhuri Kadamni, that when a person does not take bhakti, it is not the fault of the person, it is the fault of the devotee with whom he has come in contact with. So then one can say that maybe it was unfortunate that that person did not come in contact with a devotee who was pure enough to give him bhakti. Right? So it's possible that somebody comes in contact with me and does not take bhakti, but then comes the next day and comes in contact with a sannyasi or a more elevated devotee and takes to bhakti. Right? So it's not the person's fault. The fault is that I could not give the person bhakti. So he says that it is important to separate Shraddha from Swabhav. That Shraddha has to be given. Now, what that person does with that Shraddha, is up to him. But whether that faith is given to him or not is a matter of his good fortune or bad fortune. Which is why Lord Kapila in this verse is saying that struck by bad fortune. So their bad fortune is they have not come in contact with a devotee who is potent enough to give them bhakti. Now, after after that seed of bhakti has been sown, after that Shraddha is established, people follow different paths, but they're devotees. Right? Somebody takes to the path earnestly and starts practicing. In some cases, the seed stays and goes for a while, but the person is already a devotee. So Prabhupada also addresses this in his purport. He says that materialistic persons are considered condemned, right? So if you note, Prabhupada does not say that materialistic persons are to be condemned. Right? If you say they're to be condemned, that means Prabhupada is attributing fault to them. That this person is a thief, he needs to be condemned. No, he's saying material persons are considered condemned. Just like you will say that a poor person is considered unfortunate. Right? So it's not the person's fault. Poor. Destiny has made him poor. So materialistic persons are that way because destiny has made it. The fault is that of the devotee who has not been able to reach out to him, or even if you reached out to him, not been able to touch his heart. So Prabhupada says the hog is interested in eating stool. If the hog is offered some nice preparation made of condensed milk or ghee, he won't like it. He would prefer obnoxious, bad-smelling stool, which he finds very relishable. Materialistic persons are considered condemned because they're interested in hellish activities and not in transcendental activities. The message of the Lord's activity is nectar. And besides the nectar, any information in which we may be interested is actually hellish. Okay, I'll do one more verse and after that we'll pause for any discussion. Dakshinena patharyamna pitralokam vrajantite prajam manu prajayante samashantana kriya kritaha. Such materialistic persons are allowed to go to the planet called Pitralok by the southern course of the sun, but they again come back to this planet and take birth in their own families, beginning again the same fruitive activities from birth to the end of life. So, such people are described as performing scriptural duties from impregnation till death. Right? And they are, as per Lord Kapila, going to Pitraloka by the southern course of the sun. And after that, they are reborn actually among their own family members because of their attachment. Right? The same point is made by Krishna in chapter 8. When Arjuna asks Krishna that what is the path by which a person comes and does not come, then Krishna says that the mystic who passes during the smoke, the night, the fortnight of the waning moon, or the 6 months when the sun is in the southern hemisphere, they reach the moon planet, but again come back. Prabhupada says that those who are elevated to the higher planets again come back into the same family for which they have too much attachment. So even in the process of Gyan, giving up the family is recommended for this reason, because too much entanglement in the family means that you have a lot of unfilled karma. If you have offended somebody in the family, then you need to take birth again to get offended by that person. If you have helped somebody in the family, you will need to take birth so that that person can help you. So there is lot of entanglement in the family. The closer the family is, the more the entanglement is, which is why this cycle of karma within the family, it will continue life after life after life. Okay, let me pause here, see if you have any comments or discussion.
We can't hear you, Kishore Prabhu.
Prem Kishore Prabhu, you have a question? No, okay. I think you're right, his sound is muted. Okay, there are no more questions, then we'll move on to the next verse, 21. Tatastakshina sukrataha punarlokam sati patanti vivasadevahe sadhyo vibhramishitodayaha. When the results of the pious activities are exhausted, they fall down by higher arrangement and again come back to this planet. Just as any person raised to a high position, sometimes all of a sudden falls. So this verse explains how do they take rebirth. So very similar verse in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 21, Shina Punya Vishanti, that Krishna says same thing. When they've enjoyed vast heavenly pleasures, then they eventually the pious activities get exhausted and they fall down to this mortal planet again. Prabhupada says that it's confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 8:16, another verse, Brahma Bhuvanaloka, that even if one goes to a higher planet, he comes down again. Anyone who attains my abode never comes to the conditioned life of material existence. So Prabhupada said that Krishna confirms this for his devotees. Next verse, 22. Tasmat tvam sarva bhavena bhajasva pramastetinam tadgunashraya bhaktya bhajanya padambujam. My dear mother, I therefore advise that you take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for his lotus feet are worth worshipping. Accept this with all devotion and love, for thus you can be situated in the transcendental devotional service. So Lord Kapila starts his verse with Tasmat, therefore, indicating that he is now offering a conclusive summary of the points that he has been making so far. So since all the paths other than bhakti have limitations, Lord Kapila is saying, therefore, Tasmat, with full attention, worship the Supreme Lord. Which Supreme Lord? That Lord whose attractive lotus feet are meant for worshipping with bhakti, caused by his attractive qualities. And Lord Kapila is making this point after describing Sakam Karma as well as Nishkam Karma. So in the 11th verse of the chapter, Lord Kapila had advised his mother to surrender to the personality of Godhead. And this was after he had described Nishkam karma. Now he has just finished describing Sakam karma. And he's giving exactly the same advice. So the conclusion is whether you engage in Sakam or you engage in Nishkam, the best, both of them are equally useless. Best thing is to worship the Supreme Lord with devotion and concentration. And when Lord Kapila is saying that you worship the Lord, he also gives the method. He says that one should worship his lotus feet, which are meant for being worshipped. So just as a lotus flower gives pleasure to a honeybee because it contains nectar, the lotus feet of the Lord are the reservoir of pleasure for the devotees who approach with bhakti. So this is a specific instruction by the Lord to his mother, right? Which is why he addresses her as I just said as you. But essentially what he's saying is that, my dear mother, I have given several options, but for you, this is what I recommend. And why? Lord Devati say, why recommending this for me? Because you're a devotee. There are some who will take to Sakam, there are some who will take to Nishkam, there are some who take to Vikarma, and they have their destinations. But you, my dear mother, because you're a devotee, take to Bhakti. Prabhupada says, Sarva Bhavena means in all ecstasy. So Bhav is the preliminary stage of elevation before the attainment of pure love, prema. Prabhupada says, it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, Buddha Bhava Samanvita. This is Bhagavad Gita 10.8. One who has attained the stage of Bhav can accept the lotus feet of the Lord as worshipable. This is also advised here by Lord Kapila to his mother. Another also significant in this verse is the phrase Tad Gunashraya Bhaktiya. This means that discharging devotional service unto Krishna is transcendental. It is not material activity. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Those who engage in devotional service are accepted to be situated in the spiritual kingdom. So this is 14:26. Mam chayo vibhisharena bhakti yogena sevata. So Prabhupada later on says, Tad Gunashraya means that Lord Krishna's transcendental qualities are so sublime that there is no need to divert one's attention to any other activities. Guna Ashraya. That everything rests in the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Okay, verse 23. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janatyashu Vairagyam Jnanam Yad Brahma Darshanam. Engagement in Krishna consciousness and application of devotional service unto Krishna make it possible to advance in knowledge and detachment as well as in self-realization. So I'm sure you must have recognized that this verse is almost identical to the verse spoken by Sutta Goswami in the first canto. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Jatyashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chatal Ahitukam. Right? So the first three lines are exactly the same. Only thing is that in the last line, 1 to 7, it says Jnanam Chayad Ahitukam. Here it is says Jnanam Yad Brahma Darshanam. So what does this mean when Lord Kapila is saying that engagement in Krishna consciousness and application of devotional service is made possible by make it possible to advance in knowledge and detachment. So this is Lord Kapila assuring them that while I'm recommending bhakti and I've given you other paths, don't think that bhakti is a separate path. Even in the performance of bhakti, there is this manifestation of knowledge and detachment. So if you perform bhakti to Vasudeva, it will create the necessary jnana and vairagya that you need. So how can we understand this? That even if a person is looking for Brahma Darshanam, right? This is what Jnanam Yat Brahma Darshanam. So Brahma Darshanam basically means impersonal liberation. So even if a person is looking for Brahma Darshanam, Lord Kapila is saying, you perform bhakti to Vasudeva. Why? Because when you perform bhakti to Vasudeva, by that prayojan, by that bhakti, jnanam ashuvairagyam, you will get the necessary jnana and vairagya to merge into the Brahman. So everything is included in bhakti, and Lord Kapila is giving this as a proof that by the performance of bhakti you can attain Brahman if you so desire. By the performance of bhakti you can get material benefits if you so desire. And by the performance of bhakti you can get Paramatma realization if you so desire. That does not mean that bhakti is limited to them. What it means is that bhakti includes all of them. So there are many materialistic followers of Krishna, right? They are exclusively following Krishna. They worship Krishna, they have deities of Krishna, but completely for material reasons. They worship, they ask for wealth, they ask for health, etc., and they get it. That is because bhakti includes kamkand, bhakti includes jnana, bhakti includes astanga. So Prabhupada says that for arriving at the positive conclusions of knowledge in the absolute truth, the word Brahma Darshanam is significant in this verse. Brahma Darshanam means to realize or to understand the transcendence. One who engages in the service of Vasudeva can actually realize what Brahman is. If Brahman is impersonal, then there is no question of Darshanam, which means seeing face to face. Darshanam refers to seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. Now, for the impersonalist, what does Darshanam mean? It means that they are now in contact with the Brahman. So one might ask that if an impersonalist is performing bhakti, why doesn't he get Krishna? Because the nature of the bhakti is such that it forcibly gives Krishna. And the answer is that an impersonalist is performing bhakti as a means to an end. So when he goes and worships the deity, then in his mind he is saying that today I am worshipping you because I am not advanced enough to worship the impersonal. My mind needs a tangible object to focus on. And you are that object. So I'm worshipping you. Tomorrow, when I become advanced enough, then I will move away from you. Same thing they say to the Guru, that today you are my Guru, tomorrow I will be your Guru, when I become advanced enough. And the same thing they say to God. Today you are my God, tomorrow I will be your God. Right? So because they're approaching in this mentality, they do not get the ultimate benefit of bhakti. But still, the presence of bhakti is potent enough to give them what they are seeking. Verses 24-25. Yadasya chitam artheshu sameshvindriya vrittibi na vignati vaishampyam priyam apriyam ityuta Satadevatmanatmanam nihasangam samadarshanam evapadyarahitam arudham padamikshate. The exalted devotee's mind becomes equipoised in sensory activities, and he's transcendental to that which is agreeable and not agreeable. Because of his transcendental intelligence, the pure devotee is equipoised in his vision and sees himself to be uncontaminated by matter. He does not see anything as superior or inferior, and he feels himself elevated to the transcendental platform of being equal in qualities with the Supreme Person. So these two verses, I took them together because they're essentially pairing up together to describe the symptoms of Brahma Darshanam, one who has realized the Brahma and attained Jnana and Vairagya as a result of the faulty practice of Bhakti. So this, the first verse talks about Jnana and the next verse talks about Vairagya. So Jnana occurs when the mind of the person with some bhakti being fixed on the Lord, he gets attracted by the qualities of the Lord. So when he reads about the Lord, he hears about the Lord, he gets attracted by the qualities of the Lord. But because of that attraction, he is unable to accept the inequality of the material objects. So he becomes equidisposed. Prabhupada says that actually there is nothing good in the material world. In the spiritual field, everything is absolutely good. There is no inability in the spiritual varieties. Because a devotee accepts everything in spiritual vision, he is equipoised. And that is a symptom of his being elevated to the transcendental position. He automatically attains detachment, vairagya, then jnana, knowledge, and then actual transcendental knowledge. The conclusion is that an advanced devotee dovetails himself in the transcendental qualities of the Lord, and in that sense, he becomes qualitatively one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So essentially, a person considers things as favorable and unfavorable because of past impressions, right? Because when the senses capture something, the senses are not able to make this distinction. For them, it's just an impetus. Right? The nose is smelling something. All that it's doing, it's registering a certain aroma. But based on the past impressions of the mind, which is where all the impressions are stored, says this is good and this is bad. The force of bhakti is that it erases past impressions. And because of that, the person becomes equipoised. This is how Gyan creates Vairagya. That when a person, so Gyan here means Atma Gyan. When a person here is seeing himself as a soul, then any past insult or honor, it becomes inconsequential. Right? Anything that was favorable or unfavorable, it becomes immaterial. So then this Gyan automatically now gives Vairagya. Like sometimes, and we can see that in our own lives, that when we think of things that were important to us when we were children, and they seem trivial to us. As children, we would throw tantrums that I want this is important, this is not. And then we look back to it and then we just laugh at ourselves. The difference is that now that we have the knowledge of how important those things really was, how important that red horse was, or how important that gulab jamun was, the tantrums that we threw and the agony that we went through, it's laughable because of the knowledge that we have acquired. So by the practice of bhakti, Gyan appears, and by the appearance of Gyan, Vairagya appears. Okay. Prabhupada in the purport, he says that the perception of disagreeable arises from attachment. A devotee has no personal attachment to anything. Therefore, for him, there is no question of agreeable or disagreeable. Okay. Let's go to the next verse. Gyan matram param brahma Paramatmeshvaraha puman Drishyadvi pratak bhave Bhagavan ekayate. The Supreme Personality of Godhead alone is complete transcendental knowledge. But according to the different processes of understanding, he appears differently, either as impersonal Brahma, as Paramatma, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or as the Purushavatara. So, Lord Kapila is making this point. Prabhupada makes this very, very often. The same personality is perceived differently by different practitioners. So, Brahman is described here as Jnana Matram, that the Jnana yogis, they perceive the Lord as Brahman. The Astanga yogis perceive as Paramatma. So the question again comes that how does the practice of bhakti give these realizations? So Lord Kapila has already made that statement in the previous verses, right? The practice of bhakti includes the realization of karma, gyan, astang, etc., etc. Now he is explaining the why part. Why does the practice of bhakti include all this realization? So he's saying the reason they're all included because that which is the object of bhakti includes all the objects of the other paths. So when you practice bhakti, you're focusing on Bhagwan. Bhagwan includes Brahman and Paramatma. So same way bhakti includes Gyan and Astang. Right? So uh, uh, it is dependent on the practitioner, that you have a 100 rupee note. You may choose to use 5 rupees, 10 rupees, or all the 100 rupees. So you're practicing bhakti, you have a 100 rupee note, but you may choose to use only 5 rupees. Only use the Gyan part of it and get Brahman realization. Or you may choose to use 20 rupees, the Astang part of it, and get Paramatma realization. Or you can use the 100 part, 100 rupees completely. Vishwanath Chakravarti, he quotes Lord Kapila himself in an earlier chapter, 325-25. Lord Kapila says, "Oh my mother, my devotees always see the smiling face of my form with eyes like the rising morning sun. They like to see my various transcendental forms, which are all benevolent, and they also talk favorably with me." So from this, it can be understood that those who are exclusively following the path of the Lord will attain the Lord exclusively. Then Vishwanath Chakravarti has a long purport to this, and in the interest of time, I will not go through it. But essentially, he wants to make this point that all the paths are subsumed within bhakti. So it's like you're going down a highway and your destination is 100 miles down the highway. So any destination that is 10 miles down, 50, 75 miles, they're all included in this travel. It's up to you when you want to exit. So the verses that he quotes is, for Gyan Yoga, he quotes 327-28, Bhagavatam. For Astang Yoga, he quotes 328-35. And right, and then he quotes he quotes a lot of verses, but essentially he wants to make this makes this point that the path of bhakti includes all other paths, because the destination of bhakti, which is Lord Bhagwan, includes all the inferior objectives. Okay, let's go on to verse 27. Etavaneva yogena samagrane yoginaha yujyate vimato yartho yada sangas tu kritashnasha. The greatest common understanding for all yogis is complete detachment from matter, which can be achieved by different kinds of yoga. So complete detachment from sense objects is recognized as a necessary factor for achieving the goals of devotees, the goal of jnanis, the goal of yogis. So in the Patanjali Sutras, this is called Chittavritta Nirodha, the practice of controlling consciousness. So this verse describes a common practice that whether you're a devotee or a jnani or an astang yogi, says etavan yogena, all require asangas, all require detachment from the sense object. So all of them, this is the abhimata artha, that this is the desired goal. So by complete detachment, one's desired goal of prema or liberation is attained. And interestingly, this is also recommended for devotees. Here is including everybody. Prabhupada says that the purpose of all yoga is to detach one's sense activities from this material world. The final aim, however, are different. Jnanis want to become one with the Brahman effulgence, yogis want to realize Paramatma, and devotees want to develop Krishna consciousness. Right? So Prabhupada is making this point that even though Lord Kapila is recommending that regardless of what your propensity is, detachment is needed, Prabhupada is expanding on that and saying that even though the detachment is needed, the destination, the same detachment is needed, but the destination is different. Later on, Prabhupada says that the Gyan Yogi thinks that the matter is false and the Brahman is truth. Jagan Mithya, Brahman, Jagat Mithya, Brahma Satya. Therefore, by the cultivation of knowledge, he tries to detach the senses from material enjoyment. The Astang Yogis also try to control the senses. The devotees, however, engage the senses in the service of the Lord. Important point Prabhupada is making, that even though detachment is recommended, the way that the detachment is achieved is different. That Jnani on the basis of cultivation of knowledge. The yogis on the basis of the practices of Astang Yoga. And the devotees, they actually detach by attach. That they detach from the material by attaching to spiritual. Okay, verse 28. Jnaname kamparachine indriyar brahma nirgunam avabhatya tharupena Brantya Shabda Didharmina. Those who are averse to the transcendence realize the supreme absolute truth differently through speculative sense perception. And therefore, because of mistaken speculation, everything appears to them to be relative. So Devahuti may say that, my Lord, I have a desire to perform bhakti because I have heard from you and understood it. But because I was curious about Gyan and Yoga, I asked you about them and you have also explained them to me and I have understood. But in Gyan, I have not completely understood what is non-dual knowledge. So please explain that briefly. So these set of verses, they're very interesting verses because Lord Kapila will try to explain to Devahuti that why do people become impersonalists? What's going on in their mind? Because generally as devotees, we look at it from a distance. We say, okay, those Mayavadis, this is what they are going after. This is where they are messed up. And we keep a distance. Lord Kapila here is actually going to delve deeper into the mentality of the Brahmavadis or the Mayavadis. So this verse, it gives the Mayavadi conception of Brahman realization. So what does Lord Kapila say? He says that they say that the one Brahman that is composed of only consciousness, which has no qualities, then Brahmtya, it appears by error through materially directed senses to take the form of various objects and qualities. This is artha rupena. Because of artha, it takes different rupa. That because of materially directed senses, it assumes various objects and qualities, such as shabdadi, such as sound, etc. Now, so far, what Lord Kapila is saying is true. Yes, that one Brahman does appear to take many forms because of materially directed senses, and this is Bhrantya. This is an error. But what the Mayavadis do is that they reverse engineer it. So this is how they think that Brahman is one. The variegatedness in the material world is because of our senses. That is true. The senses have been given to us by the force of Maya, which is also true. So what does it mean? That because of Maya, the one Brahman has assumed variegatedness, right? Because Brahman is one. Because of our senses, we see it to be variegated. And because these senses have been given to us by Maya, ultimately it is because of Maya that Brahman has become variegated, which is also true. Now, when they start to go to the next step, saying that, so this means that variegatedness is a symptom of Maya, which means that anything that is spiritual cannot have any variegatedness in it. So they basically reverse engineer it, that since our material senses produce this variegatedness, it means that anywhere where there is variegatedness, there is material senses. It's like if there is a thief and the thief has money in his hand, and the person looks at the money in the hand of the thief and says that anywhere where there is money, there is a thief. So the fact that the money in the hand of the thief is stolen is true. But saying that anyone with money in his hand is a thief is not a true statement. And that is what Lord Kapila will explain, that this is the incorrect understanding. Another analogy to explain it is that if one is wearing green tinted glasses, everything appears to be green. When the glass is removed, then the perception will be removed. But that does not mean that the person cannot see green anymore. If there was a green grass, the person will still see the green grass. Saying that when you remove your remove green specks, you will not see any more green color, that's not an accurate statement. Saying that because you're wearing green glasses, everything is looking green to you, that's an accurate statement. But saying that removing the glasses will remove all the green from your life, from your vision, that is an inaccurate statement. So this is where the Lord Kapila is condemning. This is known as Vivartavadis. He addresses them. He says these are Vivartavadis. Vivartavad is essentially the cornerstone of Sripad Shankaracharya. Vivartavad is essentially, Shankaracharya was of course not the first person to speak about it. Vivartas has been there since the beginning of time. He just made it popular. But this is the Vivarta is the cornerstone. And Vishwanath Chakravarti has a conversation between he shows a conversation between a Mayavadi and a devotee. Now he's building on what Lord Kapila has said to make this point. So we'll follow the conversation over, and after that I'll pause. So the Mayavadis say that what is called the one knowledge or the Brahman, it falsely appears by the error of the jiva, because his own senses are contaminated. So because of the contamination of the senses of the jiva, the person is looking at this duality. What will the devotee say? You're right. I agree with you. However, this does not mean that there is complete falsity of the objects that are perceived through error. And then he gives the example that if there is a shell that is lying on the beach and it is reflecting sunlight, then a person may think that it is silver. That is the error on the part of the person. But for you to say that silver does not exist is an error on your part. It does not exist over there. It exists somewhere else. So the Mayavadis will respond to this, saying that by the eye one sees forms. So the eye is a sense, is a Gyanendriya. The person is the doer, and the knowledge has form as its object. So merely experiencing variety in Brahman is because of these various senses, which are material. And because the jiva gets these material senses out of ignorance, it means that this perception of the material universe is predicated on ignorance. The elimination of that ignorance will create the Brahman. So anywhere where you see variety, you should see it as a symptom of ignorance. And devotees respond saying that, they give an analogy that the water of Ganga exists, and cows and donkeys have an illusion of its existence in their water troughs. So the understanding is that the cows and donkeys, they go to the water troughs thinking that there is Ganges water there. Seeing that there is no Ganges water there, they conclude that Ganges does not exist, which means that they're looking for the right thing in the wrong places. So just because material distinction is a sign of illusion does not mean that spiritual distinction is also a sign of illusion. Because the distinction occurs when the senses are materially contaminated. That material distinction is accepted as a sign of illusion. However, when the senses are spiritualized, then they will see the distinction in its real form. Right? So they basically, they're essentially making this argument that Prabhupada uses the analogy many times, that mistaking a rope for a snake is illusion. Does not mean that there is no snake and there is no rope. Means that you in illusion are making that mistake. When the illusion is removed, you'll see the snake for what it is and you'll see the rope for what it is. So this is essentially spiritual variety. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says spiritual variety exists, sound exists, but it exists as the sound of Krishna's flute. Form exists, and it exists as the enchanting form of Krishna. In the same way, all variety exists, but it is existing as a way for the devotees to appreciate Krishna, for the devotees to interact with one another, and for Krishna to enjoy with the devotees. Okay, so let me pause over here, see if there's any discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I have no specific question, Prabhuji, but I wanted to wish you a very happy birthday, Prabhuji. I am very thankful for giving for you to give us the guidance and I'm guidance and training. And along with that, Prabhuji, I also wanted to especially thank you for the kind of love and affection that you and Mataji gave to me. So this is I feel that equally important for us in progressing in bhakti, because we really don't know who Krishna is and how kind it is, and only through you and devotees we could see that. So I wanted to thank you and wish you a happy birthday again, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. Thank you for your kind words. Thank you for your blessings. Okay. Any other thoughts, comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, it's not a question, just something that I saw. You were saying earlier, somebody, if he just open the book, a doctor or somebody, and try to take prescription from whatever page. I've seen also like people that look for horoscope or palmistry. One time I saw, I think it was in India itself, there was a person sitting, there's a lot of cards, and then a bird, they go and pick one card, and then they will read from that card about that person, destiny or whatever. I just want to say about that. Some people, they believe in all sort of things. How a bird can pick your card, something like that.
They do. I've seen that also. I've seen parrots picking up, and like you're saying, even sometimes devotees, they'll open up Bhagavad Gita on any page and read it, but the understanding is that one is reading it after one has read the Bhagavad Gita. That's not the way to read Bhagavad Gita, right? That you get a Bhagavad Gita, open a page, read a verse, and there. The understanding is that you have read the Bhagavad Gita and then you read a verse and say, okay, this is where now Krishna is talking about this form. If you just pick verses at random, it's basically not getting the context, making erroneous. Prabhupada, of course, helps us. And Prabhupada, in his purport, he tries to do that. If you look at Prabhupada's purport, he tries to make the verses as context-free as possible. Prabhupada says, if you read my purports, you will never go astray, for this particular reason, that otherwise the verses are very, very context sensitive. right? We see so how one Krishna is saying, do your duty. Another point is saying that give up all your duty. Srila Prabhupada, both the places, he's giving the same purport. Worship Krishna, worship Krishna. So if you read the purport, you won't get misdirected there. But in the material context, yes, people ask you to think of a number, or people will ask you to think of a color, or they have all this these weird methods. Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. So if there are no more questions, comments,
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Oh,
yeah, Haribol, Prabhu.
Just have a question, Prabhu, regarding the coming into contact with a devotee, and people. Some people accept devotional service, and some people don't. And you said it is the impurity or imperfection of a devotee who could not give the bhakti to the other person. So regarding that, I just have a question about. Many people came into contact with Srila Prabhupada, but not everybody became a devotee, right? How do we take that? Is it because they didn't have a good association or proper association?
So it depends to some extent that what do you consider as the definition of a devotee, and same point is made there also. That in Madhuri Kandapani, I'm just quoting it over here, that the devotee, a devotee who is empowered, can give another person Shraddha. What the person does with it then depends on the person's swabhav or free will or so many other things. Right? If you're not able to give Shraddha, then it means that you need to pray more to Krishna to empower you to give Shraddha. And as you're rightly pointing out, it's a good point that people who came in contact with Prabhupada, they did not, very, very, very few walked away unchanged. Whether he was talking on news channels, whether he was talking with Christian practitioners, people who were very, very committed to their path, they did not become Vaishnavas or took to the path of bhakti, but they walked away changed. There were disciples of Prabhupada who left Prabhupada never to be seen again. And later on, we see that more and more of them are now coming back. Some after 30 years, 40 years, carrying that seed of bhakti in them. So they chose not to act upon it, right? Even though they got that seed of faith, they chose not to act upon it. But Vishwanath Chakravarti makes a philosophical point. He does not make it dogmatically. He actually goes through several series of hypotheses saying that if bhakti does not come from bhakti, then it will become material, which means that bhakti can only come from bhakti. If you take that as an axiomatic truth, then the only way for the propagation of bhakti is by one devotee influencing another person. That's the only way, no other way. Krishna cannot do it, scriptures cannot do it, deities cannot do it. The only way is one devotee influencing another person. So then he makes this point that because this is the only way that bhakti can be spread, it is completely dependent on the devotee who is giving bhakti. He's the only source. It is his responsibility. There's no other alternatives. It's not that if he doesn't give it, then the person has path XYZ, right? There's only one path. So it is completely the responsibility of the devotee to give Shraddha. And of course, here he's talking collectively. He's not talking about one particular devotee, but it is only the devotees who can give Shraddha. If they're not able to give Shraddha, it means that they lack that Shraddha themselves. Because Krishna has set it up in this way. Krishna has set it up that one who has Shraddha gives Shraddha to others. Even though we say Bhakti, but essentially what is being transferred is faith. Practice is up to them. Swabhav, that's their nature. What do they do with that faith is up to them. But faith can only be given by one who has faith, which is why he makes a statement that if you're not able to give faith, either you lack faith or you have weak faith.
Thank you, Prabhu. Happy birthday, and my sincere prayer for a long, healthy, blissful, Krishna conscious life.
Thank you for your blessings, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Okay, so we will end here. Vanchakalpata rupayashchit kripa sindhubhye vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta koti vaishnav vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thy Gaur Premanande.